Discover the miraculous truth. The serpent's wings in Eden revealed before God's divine curse. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the whispers of heaven echoed through the flawless Garden of Eden, a sanctuary untouched by sin, meticulously crafted by God's own hands. Here, the breath of life animated Adam, the first man, who walked in harmony with his Creator in a realm bursting with vivid colors and sweet scents. Eve, fashioned from Adam's side, emerged as his cherished companion. Together they roamed the lush expanse, their hearts intertwined with creation, delighting in the bounty of the garden, where every tree yielded fruit ripe for the taking. All creatures roamed in peace, yet one stood apart, the serpent, more cunning than any beast the Lord God had made. This serpent, cloaked in mystery, approached Eve with an enchanting grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Did God actually say, "You shall not eat of any tree in the garden"? It hissed, its voice weaving through the stillness of the afternoon, laced with cunning persuasion. Surpassing mere temptation, there was an unsettling charm to the creature's sly words, as if it bore wings that whispered ancient secrets. Eve paused, the weight of the serpent's query pressed heavily on her heart. Doubt flickered in her mind like a candle's flame caught in the wind. Had not God clearly spoken? Yet, the serpent's insinuation stirred a curiosity within her. We may eat the fruit of the trees, but of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, God has said, "You shall not eat it, lest you die." Her voice trembled slightly, uncertain under the serpent's probing gaze, mirroring a cautious heart. With its smooth, gliding presence, the serpent offered a different vision of reality. You will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. The implication caressed Eve's soul as sweetly as the scent of ripe fruit, a heady promise of wisdom swirling around her. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As Eve considered the serpent's words, her heart tugged between truth and temptation. She looked at the fruit, and it appeared beautiful, desirable for obtaining wisdom. She extended her hand and plucked the fruit, its weight resting heavily in her palm. With a swift motion, she took a bite. In that instant, the world shifted, knowledge flooded her senses, but alongside it came a chill of realization. In that unguarded moment, Adam stood nearby, watching his beloved. The look in her eyes shifted, a mixture of enlightenment and dread that spoke of an irreversible choice. Against the backdrop of the garden's beauty, a new fear began to loom, casting shadows where light once danced. As Eve turned to Adam, their eyes met, and the initial joy of discovery faded into uncertainty. They had crossed a line, awakening a fate decreed long before the world outside their idyllic sanctuary awaited a reckoning. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath God's intensely watchful gaze, and confusion filled the air. What would become of them as the serpent coiled its truth, twisted yet alluring? Yet even in their impending judgment, a promise lingered. A glimmer of hope would one day emerge, for the seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head. As the silence of the garden thickened, the intimate peace they once enjoyed shattered like glass. Adam's heart raced, the weight of Eve's choice bore down upon them both. A deep ache formed in his chest as he reached for her hand, yet the bond that had once seemed unbreakable now felt like a fragile thread, fraying under a newfound burden. What had they done? A darkened shadow unfurled in their hearts, and suddenly, the lush verdure transformed. The vibrant colors dulled, an exquisite creation now rendered in muted tones of despair. The rustle of leaves, which once whispered sweet songs of worship, now spoke solemnly of loss and betrayal. In the cool of the evening, they heard the echo of footsteps, a sound familiar yet reverberating with impending judgment. It was the Lord God, walking in the garden, seeking fellowship with his beloved creations. Adam and Eve, the recipients of divine intimacy, felt a disquiet in their souls. They knew they were not alone. Tentatively, they hid among the tree's fig leaves hastily sewn together covering their nakedness, a futile attempt to shield themselves from divine scrutiny. Yet God, who sees all, called, "Where are you?" His voice resonated with an unfathomable blend of love and sorrow. "We heard you in the garden, and we were afraid, because we were naked, and we hid ourselves," Adam replied, his voice trembling as the weight of his actions crashed over him. The tinge of shame twisted within him, waking knowledge of good and evil but leaving behind the bitter taste of rebellion. "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you not to eat?" The question hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the covenant made, now broken. The heart of God, rich in mercy, felt the sting of betrayal. Adam's instinct was to deflect the blame. "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit of the tree, and I ate." Eve, too, found her own defense. "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." Responsibility bounced between them like a toxic game, neither willing to shoulder the weight of their defiance. The serpent, whose cunning words had seduced them, awaited its judgment. The Lord God spoke with authority, declaring the curse upon the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life." With a heavy heart, God addressed the depths of their choices, revealing the consequences that would unfurl through creation. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." Hope lingered in his words, for within the curse was a promise redemption would come. Stripped of their former glory, Adam and Eve grappled with the looming reality of their new existence. "Through pain," he said, "you shall bring forth children, and your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." The ground would yield thorns and thistles, and with sweat upon their brows, they would toil for sustenance. Yet even in the pronouncement of judgment, the sadness of divine love remained. In the face of their sorrow and shame, God made garments of skin for them, a testament to his grace amidst their failure. As they were cast from Eden, the gate sealed behind them, they were met with an expanse that felt foreign and unwelcoming. Yet the promise whispered in the air lingered like a melody, a promise of the seed that would one day bring restoration. But what they could not foresee was that from the ashes of their disobedience, God's sovereign plan was already unfolding, shaping the course of humanity toward a redemption far greater than they could imagine. The seed of the woman would indeed rise to crush the serpent's head, but the path would be fraught with trials and tribulations beyond their understanding. In the wilderness outside the garden, the world had transformed into a place of toil and trial. Adam and Eve stood on the threshold of their new reality, the shimmering paradise now a distant memory. The air was thick with sorrow, and the ground beneath them bore the weight of their lost innocence. With each step they took, the rustling of leaves seemed to mock their plight, reminding them of their former glory, now tarnished by their choice to defy the command of God. As dusk settled, the two walked hand in hand, facing the grave ramifications of their actions. The bitterness of solitude enveloped them, and yet, in the depths of their hearts, the promise of a coming Redeemer persisted, a flicker of hope even amidst despair. Time moved swiftly, and as the days turned into weeks, their lives became filled with the mundane struggles of survival. Adam labored diligently, the soil beneath his feet stubbornly resisting his efforts. Thorns pricked at his hands, a painful reminder of Eden's lost comfort. Meanwhile, Eve bore the weight of motherhood's impending pains, her heart torn between the joy of new life and the anguish of their fallen state. One fateful evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren earth, Eve felt the first pangs of labor. A cry escaped her lips, mingling with the echoes of the land. Adam, filled with both trepidation and excitement, hurried to her side, support in his heart and strength within his trembling hands. "Fear not, my beloved," he said, though he felt the weight of uncertainty. "For in this pain, there is hope, the promise of the seed draws near." With each contraction, the reality of their plight unfolded before them, the joy of creation intertwined with the pangs of their lost paradise. And as the first cries of their son filled the air, an incomprehensible awe gripped their spirits. This child, newly born into a world marred by sin, was a testament to both their love and their brokenness. They named him Cain, for Adam said, "I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord." Yet, the name held a deeper significance, a reflection of the duality of existence that now characterized all of humanity, the tension between divine grace and human failure. As the days turned into years, their family grew. Abel came forth, a shepherd with a heart for God, his offerings of the firstborn of his flock welcomed by the Almighty. But Cain, struggling within the confines of his heart, was tormented with jealousy and bitterness, unaware of the serpent's whispers still lurking in the shadows of his soul. The tension within their household mounted, a mirror to the enmity prophesied long ago. With each sacrifice offered, acknowledgement of sin grew palpable, deceitful thoughts and hidden resentment stirred in Cain's heart. He watched Abel, his brother, receive God's favor, and with it surged the darkness of rebellion. One fateful day, when once again they brought their offerings before the Lord, the joy of acceptance for Abel contrasted sharply with Cain's anger and despondency. God, perceiving Cain's turmoil, spoke gently yet firmly, "Why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." It was a warning, a call to heed the divine counsel and turn from the path of despair. Yet, driven by jealousy, Cain's heart hardened, he could not grasp the grace being extended to him. The stage was being set for the unfolding of God's great plan. In the cacophony of human emotions, a shadow loomed, its threat ever more real. But in the midst of turmoil, God remained sovereign, weaving his redemptive thread through the fabric of their lives, preparing for a future that was yet to be revealed, a future rich with promise and unforeseen grace. But who could imagine the depths of God's mercy that lay ahead, even amidst betrayal and bloodshed? And when would they come to understand that through their pain, his great narrative of salvation was shaping their story? As the sun rose the following day, the ominous clouds of grief seemed to gather over the hearts of Adam and Eve. They worked side by side in the fields, yet silence enveloped them like a shroud, heavier than the ache of hard labor. The air held the scent of desolation, further weighing upon their spirits. In the shadow of their dwelling, temptation lay like a coiled serpent. Cain and Abel, emerging from the morning mist, bore witness to the world before them, one which reflected both their parents' transgressions and the lurking menace of their own unbridled emotions. As Cain, strong and resolute, strode forward, Abel trailed gently behind, light-hearted and earnest in his devotion to the Lord. One day, as the sun reached its zenith, Abel proposed an outing. "Let us go to the fields, brother. Perhaps we can offer our heartfelt praise to the Creator." Cain, influenced by the storm within, managed a half-hearted nod. In his heart, the shadow of bitterness writhed and grew, a constant reminder of his perceived injustices. As they worked, Abel's laughter rang like a clear bell, a sound that irritated Cain deeper, stirring the churning waves of envy. When twilight draped its cloak over the land, the brothers prepared to offer sacrifices once more. Abel, with the firstborn of his flock, approached the altar with reverence, while Cain gathered from the fruits of the ground, his spirit in turmoil. As the fire consumed Abel's offering, smoke ascended like a prayer, and the Lord looked upon the sacrifice with favor. But Cain, eyes darkened with rage and disappointment, saw the flames consume his grain with indifference. In that moment, the Lord spoke again to Cain, yet this time, it was not a question but a plea wrapped in divine mystery. "Cain, why has your countenance fallen? Know that if you do well, you will find favor, but if you do not, sin crouches at the door, desiring to master you." But Cain, shackled by his own will, disregarded the still, small voice. He turned to his brother, the dark seeds of resentment taking root in his heart. In a fit of jealousy and anger clouded by the serpent's whisper, he enticed Abel to follow him into the fields, away from the sight of the heavens that watched unsparingly. The brotherly bond darkened, and in the quiet echoes of the land, Cain confronted Abel. Anguish and hatred swirled within him, finally manifesting in a moment of horror. One strike against his brother and the earth seemed to tremble with indignation. As Abel fell, silence engulfed the fields, a grave token of the darkness that had entered creation. Cain, faced with the unspeakable act, stood breathless amid the blood of his own kin, his heart now a canvas marked with sin. The weight of his actions surged, a reality that would become a memory woven eternally into the tapestry of humanity. And from the dust, the voice of the Lord rang out in sorrowful authority. Cain! Where is your brother Abel? The question echoed in the stillness, a divine inquiry into the depths of Cain's heart. I do not know, am I my brother's keeper? Cain spat back, each word a denial of responsibility, shrouding him further in deception. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground, declared the Lord. In that moment, the heavens bore witness to the gravity of sin's consequences. The heavy justice of the Creator fell upon Cain as a divine curse. Yet even in judgment, the Lord displayed grace, marking Cain so that any who encountered him would not take his life. The promise lingered, a flicker of mercy amid wrath, for Cain was not beyond redemption. And thus, the legacy of the first murder echoed through the ages, the intricacies of the human heart laid bare before the Almighty. As Adam and Eve mourned the loss of their son, a warning was etched upon their souls. The struggle between good and evil was woven into the essence of creation. Could they grasp that even through such destruction, God was orchestrating his divine purpose? What truths remained veiled in the shadow of grief, waiting to be unveiled? The essence of their journey lay not solely in their failures, but in the unfathomable depths of God's redemptive love still paramount over all. And the days passed over the earth, marked by the toils of Adam and Eve, the fruits of which they consumed in sorrow. With each setting sun, the shadows deepened, reflecting upon their hearts as the weight of loss clung to them like the evening mist. Cain, now a wanderer, traversed the barren land, each step echoing the turmoil of his heart. In the solitude of his exile, Cain delved deeper into the darkness that engulfed him. He settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden, the name itself a testament to his restless spirit. There, amidst desolation and distance from the presence of God, he began to build a city, naming it after his son Enoch, a sign of a future he sought to forge apart from divine favor. But the lingering weight of Abel's blood bore down upon him, a haunting reminder of what he had done. In the silence of the night, the echoes of laughter turned to whispers of accusation, tormenting him in dreams and waking moments alike. Yet in that solitude, a thought took root: could he somehow claim dominion over his own fate, create a lineage untouched by the shadow of his sin? As years rolled by, Cain took for himself a wife, and they bore children. He taught them the ways of the earth, how to till the soil, how to craft tools from stone, and how to sing praises in the night, but always with a heart heavy with grief and shame. Their voices rose in the shadow of his decisions, prayers for a future unmarred by the sins of their forefather. One day, as the sun broke over the horizon, illuminating shadowy valleys and the lushness of the earth, the Lord spoke once more. Cain, you shall wander no more in fear. The ground you have tilled shall bloom, and your descendants shall fill the earth. But in Cain's heart, a tempest brewed. He wrestled with the promise of grace, the divine assurance that others would come forth from his line. Perhaps I can dismiss this curse upon myself, he murmured to himself, and reforge my path. Yet with every attempt to reshape his destiny, the specter of Abel haunted him, reminding him of sin's true grip upon his heart. Meanwhile, Eve's heart ached, bound to the knowledge of her loss yet driven by a flicker of hope. She bore another son, naming him Seth, for God has appointed me another offspring in place of Abel. In her heart, she longed for the restoration of what had been lost, the return of harmony to the family that could never be whole again. As she nurtured Seth in the shadows of grief, the earth began to flourish again. Generations flowed forth from Seth's lineage, and Eve clung to the promise from this line: the salvation of mankind might one day spring forth. The cries of those righteous began to rise, the true worshippers seeking the face of God, their hearts yearning for reconciliation. Yet amidst these developments, Cain's lineage fortified itself, embracing strength and cunning, proud of their existence yet unaware of the unseen battle raging within their patriarch. A dark legacy was birthed alongside the re-emergence of hope from Seth. Each moment lingered, God watching with a heart full of both sorrow and purpose, ever weaving his intention through the tapestry of humanity's frailty. Mysteriously, a question loomed: would Cain's descendants pursue the path of redemption or deepen the divide born from jealousy and strife? In a world stretching toward the unknown, the seeds of humanity's choice would unfurl, revealing, perhaps, not only the nature of man but the unwavering faithfulness of God who brings forth light from darkness. And as the years multiplied, the earth stirred beneath the hands of both Cain and Seth. Each, in their own way, shaped the world around them with their toil and innovation. Seth, growing in the love and guidance of his mother, Eve, called upon the name of the Lord. From his descendants, a generation rose that sought after the heart of God, a stark contrast to the shadows lingering over Cain's line. In the land of Nod, Cain's family thrived. His sons and daughters bore the mark of their father, the burdens of ambition and pride woven tightly into their existence. Cain taught them many skills: the art of metalwork, the crafts of the soil, the music of the lute, and through them, a civilization emerged. Yet in all their accomplishments, they remained indebted to the dark seed of anger that had blossomed in their father's heart, obscuring the path to true redemption. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, Lamech, a great-grandson of Cain, gathered with his kin. "Hear me, O sons of my father," he proclaimed, a fervor gripping his voice. "I have slain a man for wounding me, and a young man for injuring me." His defiance echoed in the fields, a chilling affirmation of Cain's legacy, a cycle of violence and sorrow, an echo of the original sin that plagued their lineage. Back in the fertile lands where Seth's descendants flourished, a profound unity formed among them, enkindled by a longing to restore communion with God. They built altars and offered sacrifices, seeking to atone for their forebears' transgressions. With each prayer, they called upon the Lord, yearning for the promise of grace to shape their future. A keen realization settled among them: they were but threads in the grand tapestry of God's purpose. Eve, aged but steadfast, heard the cries of those who prayed. "O Lord, remember your promise to us," she whispered into the encroaching twilight. "From my seed, bring forth the one who shall crush the serpent's head." As days rolled into nights, God watched, aware of the deepening divide between Cain's line and that of Seth. Pervasion of sin within Cain's lineage surged like a tempest, while the humble heart of Seth's family sought the light. The cries for redemption multiplied, tracing their roots back to the garden where humanity first fell. In this sacred time, a voice stirred in the hearts of those who sought God, echoing promises vested in millennia past. "Rise, O you who seek my face, for the time approaches. The seed of the woman will one day tread upon the neck of the serpent." And thus, the wheels of destiny turned, slowly revealing the invisible hand of God. The tapestry of mankind unraveled in distinct threads but was destined to weave together once more, for God's plans remained steadfast. While Cain's household reveled in its accomplishments, unaware of the spiritual decay consuming them, the echo of Eve's hope lingered in the air, foretelling a day when all would be made right through the one who conquers. In the hearts of the faithful, the seed of promise swelled and thrived, even amidst the chaos. So the question lingered deeply: would humanity recognize the grace amid their shadows? The answer wove itself into the fabric of history, waiting for its unveiling in the fullness of time, as the serpent's wings brushed against the earth, heralding a divine reckoning. And it came to pass, in those days, that the descendants of Seth multiplied greatly in the land. They were known as the sons of God, for they walked in righteousness and sought the ways of the Most High. Among them was a man named Enosh, a son of Seth, who began to call upon the name of the Lord with fervent hearts, establishing the practice of prayer and worship among his people. The heavens appeared brighter above them, as if the very stars spoke of their devotion. The earth, untamed and bounteous, responded to their supplications, yielding its harvest in abundance. The fragrance of their offerings ascended like incense to the throne of grace, and God looked upon them with favor. Yet in the land of Nod, Cain's descendants grappled with the consequences of their rebellion. Lamech's harsh words became a hymn, sung in the halls of oppression and strife. His sons, Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal-Cain, became renowned for their skills, yet their hearts bore the weight of their forefathers' sin, sowing discord among their neighbors. Strife engulfed them like a storm, breeding enmity and fear. One day, it came to pass that a young man from Seth's line, named Methuselah, ventured into the fields at twilight, contemplating the legacy of his forebears. As he wandered, he came upon a hidden grove, lush and untouched, where he beheld a vision of a great tree, its roots entwined with the earth and its branches laden with fruit. From within the shade, he heard a whisper, a soft, beckoning call. "Seek the one who is to come, for he shall restore all that has been lost." Troubled yet inspired, Methuselah returned to his people, his heart aflame with a prophecy as old as Eve's lament. "Brothers and sisters," he declared before the assembly, "the Lord has revealed to me a promise. A seed shall rise out of our number, one who will mend the breach and vanquish the serpent." The crowd stirred with anticipation. Hope ignited in the hearts of the faithful, rippling through their assembly. "What shall we do?" they asked, their voices mingling in solemn wonder. "We must press on in prayer and righteousness," Methuselah urged. "We must cultivate obedience in our lives so that the promise may come forth from among us." And so, their fervor increased. They gathered in unity, their lives entwined like the roots of the great tree that bore witness to Methuselah's vision. Altar fires burned brightly, casting light into the surrounding darkness as hymns of praise erupted into the night sky. They resolved to pass their devotion to the generations that followed, eager to fulfill the impending promise. Meanwhile, in the land of Nod, the shadows grew long as Cain's descendants strayed further from the path of life. Lamech, burdened with his heritage, began to see the consequences of his pride, yet pride is a cruel master. He challenged the warriors of the land to drastic feats of strength, sowing deeper discord among the tribes. Each victory only reinforced his belief in might over mercy, amplifying the prophecy of war that rang among them. Yet even in their darkened hearts, seeds of trepidation grew. For they had heard whispers of the promise borne by Seth's lineage, a hope that sought to extinguish the rising tides of their own destruction. In the quiet expanse of the world, the two lines prepared to intersect, stained by sin and drenched in grace. The whisper of the past flowed into the present, echoing the eternal cadence of divine purpose. Thus, the divine clock continued its unwavering rhythm, awaiting the appointed time for the unfolding of God's redemptive story. For the serpent's wings may still brush against the earth, but they herald not just destruction, they herald the promise of deliverance drawing near. And it came to pass that as the days grew long, the hearts of the sons of God remained steadfast in their worship. Enosh, with eyes that shone with the light of understanding, led them in prayer, and they sought the counsel of the Lord earnestly. They gathered at the foot of the mountains, where the stones had cried out with the weight of their cries, and there their voices rose like a sweet melody unto the heavens. "Remember the promise," Enosh proclaimed, his voice echoing against the mountains. "For our God is not a man that he should lie, what he has spoken shall surely come to pass." The assembly nodded in agreement, each heart quickened by the notion of the coming seed. In those same days, a shadow passed over the land of Nod. Lamech, proud and unyielding, felt a stirring in the air, a disturbance that quickened the pulse of fear in his heart. He had come to boast of his might before his people, declaring, "I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me." His words hung like a storm cloud, heavy with the promise of violence. Genesis 4 verses 23 to 24. It was a testament to the depths of his heart, where grace could find no birth, only bitterness took root. Yet his sons, Jabal and Jubal, though wrapped in their father's legacy, began to feel the tug of something greater. They wandered to the borders where the land of Seth's descendants met their own, searching for something they could not name. What they found were whispers of hope, carried on the wind, a prophecy of a deliverer who would come and break the cycle of bloodshed. Intrigued, they ventured closer, their hearts stirring with an unfamiliar emotion. What if it is true? Jubal asked Jabal as they crossed the threshold into the realm of Enosh's people. What if there is a promise that can change our fate? As night cloaked the land in shadows, the fires that flickered in Seth's lineage burned bright and warm, drawing the weary wanderers close. They listened from the edges of the crowd, hearing tales of the great tree seen by Methuselah, a symbol of hope and restoration. Curiosity ignited within them, and they found themselves yearning for the righteousness they had spurned in their father's house. Brothers and sisters, Enosh spoke passionately, we shall not cease our prayer. For every prayer is an act of war against the darkness that seeks to devour the soul of man. The promise shall be birthed among us. Within the gathering, Methuselah stood as a beacon of faith. He raised his hands and said, as the Son of God grows among us, so too shall our hearts bear witness to the miracle of his coming. We must ready ourselves, for the time of his visitation draws near. Let us not falter. Thus the fervor of prayer erupted like a mighty river, flowing over the land, and even the stars seemed to pause in their courses at the intensity of their supplications. The ground trembled beneath the feet of the righteous, and a force was unleashed that resonated through the very fabric of creation as if responding to the cry of the faithful. Meanwhile, darkness still crept closer to the horizon, and amidst the din of these preparations, a new tension formed. Lamech, feeling the tremors of the unfolding promise, called unto his sons, emboldened by fear and pride. We shall not bow down to any man, lest he seeks to take our place. Yet unbeknownst to him, the shadows that lurked were those of the serpent, whispering lies to stoke the fires of war, the very war foretold that would signal the coming of the seed. As the faith of Seth's descendants soared, so too did the rage among the tribes of Cain, prepare for a confrontation that would echo through the ages. And so the chapter unfolded, where hope clashed with wrath, grace danced with pride, and the stage was set for the greatest revelation of God's sovereign plan, which would soon be realized. For in the depths of loss and chaos, God was crafting a deliverance that no man could foresee, laying the foundation for a covenant that would shape the destiny of all mankind. And it came to pass, as the hearts of the righteous soared in fervent prayer, that the shadows grew denser over the land of Nod. The spirit of discontent stirred within Lamech, urging him to gather his followers, inciting them with prideful rhetoric. Let us fortify our strength, he proclaimed. For we are the children of the mighty. The fear of man shall not lay hold upon us. The voices of his kin echoed in agreement, but unbeknownst to them, their cries invited the wrath of heaven. Meanwhile, the sons of God, in their assembly, continued their earnest prayers, lifting their voices like incense to the Lord. Enosh urged them, for even now, the promise unfolds before our eyes. We are the heirs of the covenant established from the beginning. Our petitions ascend toward heaven like the smoke of an altar, and surely the Lord will respond. Under the pavilion of starlit sky, the faithful souls lit torches, illuminating the night with hope. Methuselah spoke again, his voice deep with wisdom. Fear not the shadows gathering yonder, for the light of the world shall pierce through the darkness. The serpent's venom shall be undone by the seed of promise, who shall rise to crush his head. His declaration resonated amongst the faithful, each soul feeling the spark of courage igniting their resolve. As the dawn crept over the horizon, a new day broke, bringing with it a tension that shimmered in the air. The tribes of Cain were emboldened, driven by their father's bitterness, and the dark counsel whispered in their ears. Lamech, with contrived valor, turned his gaze toward the assembly of Seth's descendants, his heart harboring wrath that sought to extinguish the burgeoning light. Let us march against them. Lamech declared, commanding his sons to gather arms. We shall show the sons of God that their songs of hope are but air, empty and without power. We will strike fear into their hearts and subdue the promise they clutch so desperately. His eyes, filled with pride, depicted a storm brewing within him, fueled by the very serpent that had once led Adam and Eve into defeat. As Jabal and Jubal stood upon the precipice of choice, they felt the weight of their heritage tugging at their souls. Shall we join the throng of our father in this quest of wrath? Jabal hesitated, glancing toward the land where Enosh's people dwelled. Or shall we align ourselves with the promise spoken of in whispers? In that moment, the heavens rumbled as if in response to their thoughts, and the ground beneath their feet trembled, echoing the prayers of Enosh and the faithful. The tension between light and darkness had reached a climax, two destinies awaited to unfold before their very eyes. Then came a messenger from among their people, a prophet bearing the burden of revelation. His garment was frayed, and his face bore the marks of divine visitation. Brothers, flee from the path of blood. Embrace the promise. For the flame of hope ignites not just upon the altar of Seth, but in the hearts of all who would believe. Thus the hearts of Jabal and Jubal began to turn towards righteousness, drawn forth by the gravity of the divine plan they could scarcely comprehend, yet felt deeply within their spirits. But as the clamoring of feet and war cries rumbled forth from Lamech's lineage, a question pierced the thick air: were the rivers of faith strong enough to withstand the tide of wrath? For the true battle, the battle of the ages, was about to commence, revealing the depths of God's sovereign plan, hidden until the appointed time. Would the promise prevail, or would the darkness once more envelop the land? The answer awaited in the hands of the Creator. And it came to pass that as the sun rose over the horizon, illuminating the battlefield, the hearts of both clans were set for what lay ahead. Lamech's prideful wrath charged like a tempest, traversing through his covetous kin, while the sons of God stood resolute, their spirits lifted by faith and fervor. In that sacred hour, the weary earth bore witness to the culmination of a conflict birthed in the garden, a reckoning long awaited. Enosh, knowing the weight of the promise prophesied, stepped forward, his face aflame with the light of hope. Brothers and sisters, he called, drawing the eyes of the faithful toward him. Today is not simply a day of battle, but one of divine appointment. We do not fight with flesh and blood, our battle is against the darkness that looms, the serpent's deceit. With each shout of worship, we fortify our hearts against despair. No fear shall take hold of us, Methuselah proclaimed, his voice resounding. For the truth we bear is stronger than any lie. The seed that shall crush the serpent's head moves among us, and with it comes salvation for all willing to turn from wickedness. At the brink of the battlefield, Cain's descendants, emboldened by desire for dominance, advanced under the banner of their father's legacy. Lamech, his heart ablaze with visions of his might, rallied them. Let us teach them the might of our legacy. The serpent has given us strength. But unbeknownst to him, the serpent's grip had ensnared him deeper, blinding him to the power of grace that stood unwavering. And so, as the two factions met upon that sacred ground, a mighty clash erupted. The air thickened, heavy with the cries of men, sounds of desperation resonating against the backdrop of divine purpose unfolding. Yet amid the chaos, the words of Enosh rang clear. Lift your voices. Let the enemies of hope tremble beneath the sound of praise. Suddenly, amidst the fray, a great light flashed before their eyes, a vision of the future that God had woven within the fabric of their souls. There, amidst the chaos, stood a figure radiant and pure, the promised seed, a spiritual warrior waiting to crush the darkness. I am the beginning and the end, the figure proclaimed, echoing through the skies, and through your faith, I will come forth. At the sound of his mighty voice, the ground shook, and the whispers of the serpent faded into silence. The bewildered warriors, amidst their battle cries, halted, jaw-dropped and awe-struck, trembling under the weight of divine presence that descended upon them. From Seth's lineage, a new resolve gripped the hearts of the faithful. They fell to their knees, voices united in cries of mercy and redemption. O Lord, let your light shine forth. Save us from our own darkness. The very elements shifted, the winds echoed their prayers, and the heavens seemed to respond with a flood of compassion. Even in the shadows, Lamech felt the tremors of his arrogance begin to falter. What is this power? He gasped, his heart wavering. The serpent's illusion peeled away, revealing the poverty of his own soul. The weight of his legacy suddenly felt unbearable. At that poignant moment, Jabal and Jubal, having seen the radiance of truth, spoke forth with courage. Lamech, we cannot continue in darkness. The venom of our past has bound our hearts in chains. But behold, a promise is upon us, a light that outshines even our darkest deeds. Their voices sparked a shift, turning the tide of his pride toward vulnerability and hope. Yet the serpent's rage surged within Lamech's heart. Cowards! You dare turn from power? He thundered, but the light of truth pressed against him like a heavy weight, begging for release. In that battle of wills, the divide deepened. The stark contrast between life and death manifested before them. Those who grasped the promise of grace stood firm, while the shackled few floundered beneath the burden of their choices. Then, in the thick of battle, the very ground trembled in response to the voices ascending toward heaven. The earth itself echoed back their cries, reverberating through time with an ancient promise: the seed shall prevail. Redemption is coming forth. And as the warriors fought, divine orchestration met their efforts, knitting together the fabric of their fates, creating a path for reconciliation that no man could foresee. The sworn enmity began to fade, and healing grace poured forth in mighty waves. The power of the promise ruptured the stony ground of bitterness, challenging hearts to awaken and embrace the fruit of hope. Amidst the cries of joy and anguish, the figure of light grew brighter, revealing a path paved by grace and mercy. You are marked by love, he proclaimed, and should you follow my ways, the all-encompassing shadow of sin shall give way to the dawn of a new creation. I offer you life. In that moment, Lamech found himself engulfed by the truth he had rejected. The burden of his ancestral sin weighed heavier than he could bear, yet, in a choice sparked by revelation, he whispered a prayer renewed by the light that blazed forth from the seed: Deliver us, O Lord. For I am a broken man. Heal my heart and lead us into life. And so, upon that sacred battlefield, the hearts of men and women once leading them toward destruction were instead transformed. The promise swept through their midst, knitting together the remnants of humanity. Those who thirsted for redemption stepped forth to receive this divine gift, while those burdened by their pasts found solace in the sanctuary of grace. As dusk fell upon the earth, the remnants gathered in unity, gazing upon the vanquished darkness as a new dawn approached. They beheld the seed of promise arise, illuminating their hearts, a beacon of hope stretching far beyond the blood-stained history that had once defined them. The heart of God pulsated in the lives of the faithful, reshaping destinies, for in every season and every fracture, God's sovereign plan unfolded, drawing all to himself, a reconciliation birthed from the depth of despair into the arms of divine love. And thus, humanity's story continued, forever sculpted by the embrace of mercy amid the shadows, reminding all who would listen that within every fall, a Redeemer awaited to restore souls and fashion a new beginning. And now, beloved friends, it is your turn to embrace this truth, to walk boldly in the light of God's unfailing promise. If this story has touched your heart, you need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth, so leave a like now to tell the world about God's glorious grace. Comment your reflections and how this testament has impacted your faith journey, for your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. Let us uplift one another in faith and hope, bringing forth the light of Christ to those in darkness.